Ron DeSantis, have you ever considered existing in a world where you aren't a pathological liar, where you don't just kowtow to every single culture war bit of shenanigans that people want you to? Have you ever considered maybe, just maybe, being a good person? Guys, apparently Ron DeSantis is at it again. Florida is basically Texas 2 Electric Boogaloo. So we're going to have to talk about the most recent thing he's tried to do, which is appointing some anti-trans members onto his board of medicine. Because, you know, why wouldn't he do that? Anyways, let's get into the fan art section first, and then we'll get into the topic at hand. From Boyos, I came back because I had an epiphany, and I needed to share it. Outlaw, Raz, and Suris. Next one we have here is from Trashman. Been a fan of the channel for a while and wanted to show my appreciation through drawing Femboy Slime Suris. I like... Okay, so my favorite part of this piece... Hands down... Look at this man! Look at him! He is having a day. He is having a whole ass day. It's perfect. Thank you, Trash Man. The last one we have is from Philippi Nico. Said, Suris had to take a Lord Dumpy during his hotel stay today. I hope this helps him feel better. My first fan art. That is a dumpy. It's literally a dumpy. Anyways, as always, everybody, thank you all for your fan art submissions. If you want your fan art to be shown in a future video, the best way to do it is to drop the fan art into the fan art section of the Discord. With that all said, let's go ahead and get right into things. So, this information comes to us thanks to Aaron Reed. They actually do a lot of reporting on trans issues on Twitter and are a very, very valuable resource if you have not already taken a look over at their Twitter. Please give them a follow. DeSantis this week appointed 2 doctors to the Board of Medicine, both of whom have weighed in on the debate over the types of treatment offered to minors. The Board of Medicine agreed in November to alter the standard of care rules to ban doctors from performing gender-conforming surgeries on anyone under 18 and from supplying puberty blockers and hormones to anyone under 18. Wait, hold on. Purple Cobalt, thank you very much for resubscribing, but also, let me get this straight. Puberty blockers, a drug that we use in the treatment of early onset breast cancer, has now been banned for use on anyone at the age that they would be experiencing early onset breast cancer. Can you imagine being so transphobic, hating trans people so much, that you are willing to fuck over people dealing with cancer just so you can get at the trans people? Lolo Scary, thank you for naming your points for an owl. Always. There is always collateral damage with these things. Fucking hell. Forever Level 0, thank you for naming your points for an ada. You fucking degen. DeSantis appointed Gregory Kaufman, a pediatrician at Orlando Health Physician Associates, and Matthew Benson, a pediatric endocrinologist at Nemours Children's Health, to the Board of Medicine. Kaufman, who has practiced for 28 years, back in September, submitted comments to the board when it was considering its new rules that said he was gravely concerned about, and that actually cuts off. So I'm actually going to take a look and see what other information there is here. That's from Florida Politics. Let's go ahead and read the actual bit of article. Governor Ron DeSantis continues to remake important medical boards that have been a key component to his push to limit gender-affirming care, especially for minors. And his latest appointments are drawing fire from critics who contended the new appointees are being put in place to keep pushing ahead a transphobic agenda. DeSantis this week appointed 2 doctors to the Board of Medicine, both of whom weighed in on the debate. We already read this part here. He appointed Gregory Kaufman and Matthew Benson. Kaufman, who's practiced for 28 years, back in September, submitted comments to the board when it was considering its new rules that said he was gravely concerned about gender-affirming care. He said that he's never had any discussion with parents regarding their children's gender identity until the past 2 or 3 years. Yeah, and you probably didn't have any comments about children being gay earlier in the last few decades, too. Almost as if the normalization of trans and gay people in media has a positive effect on whether or not people are willing to explore those options when they are younger and are still in the middle of forming their opinions on themselves and others. Yes, trans people are publicly more common in the United States now than they were 10 years ago. Do you know why they are more common in the United States now than 10 years ago? Because it is now more publicly acceptable to be trans. So people are in the closet less, and people who wouldn't even be considering if they were trans in the first place, another word we have for those are eggs, which people for some reason think I am, but people who wouldn't even be considering whether or not they are trans in the first place are now getting the ability to explore those options in a way that they previously were not able to. Because previously, if you just had the assumption that, oh, you were born with a penis, you are always a guy, there's no way to change that, you might not explore your options further, and if you happen to actually be somebody who's trans, that can lead to you having a much more depressing experience going forward, because there's always that part of you that feels wrong, feels misshapen, feels out of place when you look in the mirror. Something that actually does get helped when you go through and start taking hormone therapy, doing social transitioning, working on your voice training, changing how you dress. There's so many options you can take that don't even involve the surgeries. But even considering those options are basically thrown out the window if every single thing around you is telling you you can't do that. Having a society that is more willing to accept you as being trans is going to naturally lead to more people coming out as trans or considering that they might be trans. Yarakoro pointed out in there, for those who don't know, Yarakoro is also the artist behind the thumbnails on this channel and several assets, including Blizzy back there in the background and this strange milk substance on my table. But Yarakoro points out that just like how suddenly there were more left-handed people when it got normalized. Yeah, because once upon a time, being left-handed was considered a sign of the devil, a sign that you were cursed by Beelzebub. But now that we know that it's just a natural phenomenon that happens as you're born, and it has no bearing on whether or not you're going to super mega ultra hell, left-handedness is a lot more common now than it was 200 years ago. Gee, funny that. Kaufman said the explosion of gender dysphoria came out of nowhere and is very much a socially driven issue. I know that some children truly struggle with gender dysphoria, but for most, it is transitory. Not necessarily. We don't actually have hard data on how many children do end up being trans or do end up being cis if they have previously considered themselves as trans. We have hard data on detransitioners into adulthood, sure, but we don't have that kind of data for kids right now, as far as I know, because, as you pointed out, that explosion of gender identity being something considered by children in the last 2 or 3 years, that would naturally lead to us not having data on it quite yet, as opposed to your position, which seems to be, it always had been this way, so this is the way we gonna do it now in the future places.
That's all, folks.
This is the type of shit that pisses me off, and I don't like it. When somebody decides that because we haven't found something in data yet, it must necessarily not exist. When the phenomenon is staring them directly in their face. It's one thing to say, aha, we have not seen the invisible unicorn, so the unicorn doesn't exist. That's one statement. But when the horse is pooping out rainbows in front of you and has a horn and is currently trying desperately to gore you with it, maybe you should start reconsidering whether or not that unicorn exists. This is that situation. Kaufman added that giving the child to make a life-altering decision at such a young age is malpractice. Puberty blockers are not such a life-altering decision, though. They're really not. Pretty much almost every single thing that happens with puberty blockers is reversed when you just stop taking them. Benson, who is also an assistant professor of pediatrics at Mayo Clinic College of Medicine in Jacksonville, has raised questions about gender-affirming care, including signing an open letter that said the use of puberty blockers should be limited to just research. We've done the research on puberty blockers already. Why would you limit a life-changing and life-altering and life-saving medicine when we already have the data that shows that it is fine to use? Why would you do that? What is the benefit of that? He then goes on to say, without much data, it's hard to make a conclusion that we're doing the right thing. We have that data. We've been using puberty blockers on cancer patients for decades. The data shows that puberty blockers are largely completely reversed when you stop taking them. The major problem with puberty blockers, the biggest one that you might deal with, is a calcium deficiency that can literally be fixed with supplements. Literally, I have a vitamin D deficiency because I stay inside more often than going outside. I can fix that with supplements or walking the fuck outside. You can fix your calcium deficiency with supplements or drinking the fuck of milk. That letter, signed by Benson, was also signed by Monica Mortensen, a pediatric endocrinologist who was also appointed by DeSantis to the Board of Osteopathic Medicine in early December. The Board of Osteopathic Medicine has also passed rules relating to gender-affirming care, although they did not incorporate all the restrictions adopted by the Board of Medicine. Representative Anna Escamani, a Democrat from Orlando and an outspoken critic of the push by limit gender-affirming care. Of the push by limit? No, that's weird. The push of limiting gender-affirming care by the DeSantis administration told Florida Politics that it looks like being a transphobe is a prerequisite to get appointed to the state medical boards. They're both anti-trans care, Escamani said of Benson and Kaufman. We have legit healthcare issues to deal with as a state, but the two new appointments are clearly only there for a reason. This culture war bullshit needs to stop. There are lives literally in the balance right now that are being affected by this all the time. And yet, if I told you it gets a little worse, would you believe me? Because it kind of does. And I hate that it does. But let's go ahead and talk about some earlier decisions that were made by Ron DeSantis earlier this year. The Florida Department of Health wants to clarify evidence recently cited on a fact sheet released by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and provide guidance for treating gender dysphoria for children and adolescents. Systemic reviews on hormonal treatment for young people show a trend of low-quality evidence, small sample sizes, and medium to high risk of bias. A paper published in the International Review of Psychiatry states that 80% of those seeking clinical care will lose their desire to identify with non-birth sex. One review concludes that hormonal treatments for transgender adolescents can achieve their intended physical effects, but evidence regarding their psychological and cognitive impact is generally lacking. According to Merrick Manual, gender dysphoria is characterized by strong, persistent cross-gender identification associated with anxiety, depression, irritability, and often a wish to live as a gender different than the one associated with the sex assigned at birth. Due to lack of conclusive evidence and the potential for long-term irreversible effects, the department's guides are as follows. Here is the problem. Read what the guide has said. This is from the Florida Department Guides. Now, social gender transition should not be a treatment option for children or adolescents. They are literally trying to restrict social transition. You know, that thing that doesn't have side effects? It literally has no fucking side effects. Because it's not a medical thing. I could go and put on a fucking skirt right now and then take it off and nothing fucking happens. They want to ban social gender transition. Social, which is the way you dress, the way you perform, and what you're called. That's it. So, okay, you know what's a form of social transition then? You know what the fucking form of that? Playing a different gendered character in an MMORPG. Having a different name in a video game. You're cis, but you know social transitioning is safer than medical transitioning? Yeah, imagine that. Imagine the basic knowledge that putting on a different shirt is safer than medications. Anyone under 18 should not be prescribed puberty blockers or hormone therapy. So literally, the thing that these medications are designed for, they're designed to be used in adolescence. They can't be used because the Florida board is saying they can't. Off-White Mage, thank you for redeeming your points, friend. Oh, well. Gender reassignment surgery should not be a treatment option for children and adolescents. Okay, so gender reassignment surgery not being a treatment option for children and adolescents, I'm perfectly fine with, because largely, gender reassignment surgery is not something that we generally perform on children or adolescents. There are very, very shrinkingly, shockingly small amounts of cases where that ever fucking happens. Oh my god. Yeah, it's virtually never done on anyone under 18. Typically, no, it's not. Ah, my god. Then it has something specifically in here for people who are born intersex, which I guess is something in a world where nothing is granted. That's something. Ron DeSantis, have you ever considered existing in a world where you aren't a pathological liar, where you don't just kowtow to every single culture war bit of shenanigans that people want you to? Have you ever considered maybe, just maybe, being a good person? That could be a useful thing. Imagine claiming that you're the party of freedom, but you also want to systemically ban people from doing things that are exercises of their freedom. You're the party of freedom, and yet you do all of that. Remember, though, guys, Ron DeSantis has thrown it through the grapevine that he wants to try to be president of the United States, potentially with a 2024 run. I feel like I speak for most people in my audience when I say we can't fucking let that happen. At all. I also think that the governor probably, at this point, should be smacked with some type of lawsuit. There's got to be some form of malpractice the dude's engaging in at this point. But with all that said, that's the information that we have on this as of right now. I will try to keep an eye on more of this as things develop as best I can. This is going to be quite a ride for people in Florida. And I am sorry for all of you who are stuck dealing with the DeSantinator. As always, everybody, let me know what you think in the comments section below. Hit the like button if you haven't already, subscribe if you haven't already, and insert end of video tagline here.